They look untouchable. Walls built sky high, cold on the outside, but chaos inside. The avoidant seems unreachable. But what if I told you? Only one type of person can slip past their defenses. Only one type. Who makes the avoidant finally let down their guard? And it's not who you think. The fortress around the heart. To understand why it takes someone special to reach the avoidant, we have to look at the fortress they live inside. It isn't a fortress of stone, but it's just as strong. It's made of silence, of walls built with distance, of doors locked by fear. On the surface, the avoidant looks calm, independent, untouched by need. But beneath that calm exterior is a storm they don't show, a storm of longing, mixed with terror. They want closeness, but closeness feels dangerous. They want love, but love feels like a trap. So they hide behind their fortress. They keep people at arm's length. They pretend they don't need much. Why? Because long ago, they learned that needing was punished. When they cried, no one came. When they asked, no one listened. When they reached out, the response was cold. So they built the fortress, a defense, a shield, a way to survive. Every wall says, I won't need you. I won't rely on you. I'll be safe alone. But here's the paradox. The fortress that protects them is also the prison that traps them. They want love, but they can't let it in. They want connection, but connection feels unsafe. So the avoidant pushes people away, not because they don't care, not because they don't feel, but because feeling is the very thing they're afraid of. And this is where most people give up. They knock on the door once or twice. They get no answer. They leave. They try to get closer, only to be met with silence. They walk away to the outside world. The avoidant seems cold, unreachable, untouchable. But that's not the truth. Because behind those walls, behind that distance, is someone who longs to be reached. Someone who aches for intimacy, but doesn't know how to survive it. Someone who wants to be loved, but is terrified love will crush them. And here's the heartbreaking reality. Most people will never see that side. Most people will never be let in. Because the fortress doesn't fall for just anyone. The avoidant tests. They withdraw. They wait to see if you'll chase, if you'll stay, if you'll prove that you won't abandon them. And most people don't have the patience for that. Most people get tired. Most people want an easy love, not a complicated one. So they leave the fortress standing. But there is one type of person who doesn't walk away. One type who has the persistence, the fire, the compassion to keep knocking, to keep showing up, to keep reaching. This person sees past the cold exterior. They see the cracks in the fortress. They feel the storm inside. They know the avoidant isn't heartless. They're just scared. And slowly, with time, with patience, with steadiness, they become the only one the avoidant dares to let in. This is why not everyone can do it. Not everyone can sit in the silence. Not everyone can love someone who pushes them away. It takes a rare kind of person to see rejection, not as proof they're unworthy, but as proof the avoidant is hurting. It takes a rare kind of person to stand steady while the avoidant pulls away, knowing that distance is not hatred, but fear. It takes a rare kind of person to slip through the cracks in the wall and remind the avoidant again and again, I'm not here to trap you. I'm not here to crush you. I'm here to stay. And that is when the fortress begins to shake. Not all at once, not in a dramatic explosion, but slowly. A door unlocked here, a window cracked open there. The avoidant lets out a truth, a memory, a feeling. It may be small, but it's monumental. Because for the avoidant, trust is rare. Vulnerability is terrifying. Letting someone in is the ultimate risk. But when they take it, when they let this one person in, it changes everything. Because for the first time, the fortress is no longer just a prison. It becomes a bridge between two people, a bridge that says, yes, I'm afraid, but maybe with you, I don't have to be. And that is the moment. The unreachable becomes reachable. The untouchable becomes touchable. The fortress begins to fall because only one type of person can reach the avoidant's heart. And when they do, the avoidant never forgets it. The one who doesn't leave. The avoidant lives expecting abandonment. It's wired into them. They assume closeness will fade. They assume love won't last. So when someone tries to get close, the avoidant tests them. They push away. They retreat into silence. They shut down conversations, right when things feel intimate. To most people, this feels like rejection, like proof the avoidant doesn't care. But to the avoidant, it's survival. It's self-protection. It's the only way they know to manage the terror of being vulnerable. Here's the thing. Most people take it personally. They get frustrated. They say, if you won't open up, then I won't stay. And they leave. That confirms the avoidant's fear. It reinforces the belief. See, no one stays. The moment I get close, they disappear. The fortress grows stronger. But then, once in a rare while, someone different comes along. Someone who doesn't leave. Not out of desperation, not out of obsession, but out of understanding. This person sees the withdrawal, and instead of running, they stay steady. They don't chase recklessly. They don't beg. They don't explode in anger. They hold space. They wait. They breathe. They let the avoidant retreat. But they don't vanish themselves. They send quiet signals of safety. A soft message. A patient tone. A steady presence. And slowly, the avoidant begins to notice. They notice this person didn't run. They notice the silence wasn't met with punishment or abandonment. They notice they are still cared for, even while they retreat. And that's when something extraordinary happens. For the first time, the avoidant wonders, could it be different this time? Could this person actually stay? It shakes their reality. It disorients their fear. Because their whole life, leaving was the pattern. But now someone is showing them a new story. This one type of person doesn't take distance as rejection. They see it as fear. They see it as a wound. They see it as a defense, not as the truth of the heart beneath it. And because they see deeper, they don't give up. This is the person who teaches the avoidant, without words, that love doesn't have to mean pain. That closeness doesn't always end in loss. That vulnerability doesn't always equal betrayal. And here's the key. It's not about chasing harder. It's about standing steady. Because the avoidant doesn't need someone to break down the walls with force. That only makes them build stronger walls. They need someone who can wait by the door. Someone who says through their actions, I'll be here when you're ready. That steadiness is rare. It requires emotional strength. It requires patience. It requires someone who can handle rejection without collapsing into insecurity. And this is why so few ever make it past the fortress. Because most people don't have that steadiness. Most people need immediate reassurance. Most people want constant closeness. But the avoidant needs space as much as they need love. The person who can give both love and space, patience and presence, understanding and boundaries, becomes unforgettable. Because the avoidant realizes something. This person is different. This person is safe. This person doesn't disappear. And for someone who has lived their entire life expecting love to vanish, that realization is like oxygen after drowning. The fortress begins to soften, not collapse, not fall all at once, but soften. A small step toward trust, a moment of honesty, a hint of vulnerability. The avoidant starts testing less. They start sharing more. They start leaning, even just a little, and the bond grows. Because for the avoidant, safety is love, consistency is love, steadiness is love, and the one person who doesn't leave becomes the one person they finally let in. Why it takes the anxious and the avoidant. Two opposites, two magnets, two patterns colliding. On the surface, they look like the worst match. One craves closeness, the other fears it. One reaches out endlessly, the other pulls away instinctively. One wants reassurance, the other avoids vulnerability. It's chaos. It's exhausting. It's heartbreaking. But here's the twist. This very opposite dynamic is also the reason anxious people are the only ones who can truly reach the avoidant. Because where others walk away, the anxious leans in. Where others get tired of trying, the anxious keeps knocking. Where others say, I can't do this anymore, the anxious says, I can't give up yet. It's not always healthy. It's not always fair, but it's real. The anxious attachment style is driven by a deep fear of abandonment. They notice every shift, every silence, every retreat, and instead of withdrawing themselves, they reach out harder. They protest. They push. They demand connection. To most people, the avoidance retreat feels final. It feels like the end. But to the anxious, it feels like a challenge. It feels like a wound that can be healed if they just hold on longer. So they hold on. They fight. They keep showing up, even when the avoidant shuts them out. And slowly, that persistence breaks through. Because deep inside, the avoidant doesn't want someone who gives up easily. They don't want someone who leaves at the first sign of distance. They want to be proven wrong. They want to be shown that love can last, that someone won't leave, that someone won't abandon them the way others did. And the anxious, with their relentless pursuit, their unwillingness to let go, their almost painful devotion, becomes the living proof the avoidant never thought existed. But here's the paradox. The very things that make the anxious reach harder are also the things that trigger the avoidant's fear. The anxious wants closeness right now. The avoidant wants distance right now. The anxious texts. The avoidant ignores. The anxious pleads. The avoidant withdraws. It's a cycle, a push and pull, a dance of fear meeting fear. But when it works, when it actually balances, it's because the anxious learns patience and the avoidant learns trust. The anxious slowly realizes that constant chasing won't work, that the avoidant needs space to breathe, that love is proven, not just in pursuit, but in steadiness. And the avoidant slowly realizes that closeness won't destroy them, that someone can love them without control, that intimacy doesn't equal entrapment. Together, they create a fragile bridge. The anxious provides persistence. The avoidant provides space. And in the middle, a real bond is built. It's messy. It's difficult. It's rare. But when the anxious and the avoidant find the balance, it's the kind of connection that changes both of them. Because the anxious learns to self-soothe. They learn to slow down. They learn that love isn't lost just because the avoidant takes a step back. And the avoidant learns to stay. They learn to share. They learn that vulnerability doesn't have to end in pain. That balance, that healing through opposite needs, is what makes the anxious the only one who can truly tame the avoidant's fear. Not tame in the sense of control, not tame in the sense of dominance, but tame in the sense of softening. The anxious softens the fortress. They show the avoidant a new reality. They teach the avoidant that intimacy doesn't equal suffocation, that closeness doesn't always end in loss, that love, when steady, can actually feel safe. And the avoidant, in turn, teaches the anxious something too. They show them that love can have space, that silence doesn't always mean abandonment, that independence doesn't always mean rejection. It's a painful match. It's a beautiful match. It's a paradox. But that's why it works. Because the anxious is the only one, persistent enough, sensitive enough, and willing enough to keep reaching until the avoidant finally opens the gate, when the walls finally crack. For years, the avoidant has lived behind walls. High, thick, unshakable walls. They built them for survival. They built them for safety. They built them to never feel the sting of abandonment again. But walls are heavy. Walls are lonely. Walls don't keep out the ache. They just keep out the cure. So when the anxious person, with their persistence, with their refusal to give up, finally slips past the cracks, something happens the avoidant never expected. The fortress trembles. The defenses weaken. The heart feels seen. For the first time in a long time, the avoidant realizes someone didn't leave. Someone stayed. Someone saw the worst and still chose to love. That moment changes everything. It's terrifying. It's overwhelming. But it's also undeniable. Because deep down, the avoidant has always longed for this. To be chosen, without conditions. To be loved, without escape routes. To be understood, without judgment. The anxious person's presence becomes a mirror the avoidant never wanted to face. A mirror that says, you are lovable, even when you're distant, even when you're guarded, even when you're scared. And that truth cracks the walls like nothing else can. At first, the avoidant fights it. They retreat. They test. They push away harder. Will you really stay? Do you really mean it? Can I trust this? It's not cruelty. It's survival. It's fear testing love. And many times, the anxious person feels like breaking. They feel like giving up. They feel like saying, I can't keep proving myself. But when the balance is right, when the anxious has grown enough to pursue without losing themselves, to love without demanding instantly, to stay without smothering, that's when the avoidant finally lets go. The walls don't crumble all at once. They fall brick by brick. One shared secret, one moment of vulnerability, one time the avoidant reaches back. Instead of pulling away, it's subtle at first, almost invisible. But then, the avoidant does something they rarely do. They admit love, and not in a casual way, not in an easy, offhand statement. When an avoidant admits love, it's monumental. It's terrifying. It's like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there's ground beneath. Because to them, love equals risk. Love equals danger. Love equals the very thing they swore they'd never let destroy them again. So if they admit it, if they say it, if they show it, it means the anxious person did something no one else could. They stayed long enough, steadied themselves enough, and showed enough unconditional presence to convince the avoidant that maybe, just maybe, this love won't vanish. And when that wall cracks, the avoidant softens in ways that shock even them. They begin to share. They begin to open. They begin to need. A word they've always feared. Needing felt like weakness. Now it feels like connection. Depending felt like danger. Now it feels like safety. And love. Love finally feels like something they don't have to run from. But here's the truth. This shift isn't permanent by magic. The avoidant doesn't suddenly become secure overnight. They don't lose all their fears in a single moment. There will still be retreats. There will still be silences. There will still be times when fear whispers louder than trust. But the difference is, once the wall cracks, once love gets in, the avoidant can never unknow it. They can never unfeel it. They can never go back to believing they are unlovable because someone proved otherwise. And even if the relationship struggles, even if it ends, that truth remains carved into the avoidant's heart forever. They were loved, they were seen, they were chosen. And for an avoidant, that's the deepest healing they could ever receive. So when the walls finally crack, when the anxious persistence meets the avoidant's hidden longing, what you witness isn't just a love story, it's a redemption story. It's proof that even the most guarded hearts can open when the right kind of love stands firm enough to stay. The rare bond that changes everything. Not every story ends with the avoidant staying. Not every love lasts forever. But when an avoidant has truly let someone in, when they've felt safe enough to reveal their heart, something irreversible happens. They change, even if they don't show it outwardly, even if they struggle to maintain closeness, even if old fears rise again. Because once love touches the avoidant, it leaves an imprint, one they can't erase, one they carry into every relationship after. And that imprint often comes from one rare type of person, the one who dared to stay, the one who didn't give up, the one who gave love without demand, yet held their own boundaries. That person becomes unforgettable, not because they were perfect, not because they forced closeness, but because they created safety, a kind of safety the avoidant never thought they could feel. For the avoidant, love usually feels like pressure, like losing air, like being trapped in a cage they can't escape from. But with the right person, love feels different. It feels like exhaling, like finally putting down the armor, like being held, not suffocated. The avoidant realizes love doesn't have to destroy them, it can restore them. This is why the bond between an avoidant and the person who reaches them is so powerful. It's not just romance, it's healing. It rewires the brain, it reshapes the heart, it challenges old beliefs that were carved by childhood pain. For the anxious person, this bond is also transformative because loving the avoidant requires growth. It requires patience. It requires learning not to lose themselves while waiting for the avoidant to open. So when it works, both people evolve. The avoidant learns to stay. The anxious learns to steady. And together, they build something neither thought was possible. Of course, it's not easy. It's not a fairy tale. It's messy. It's complicated. It's filled with back and forth, progress and setbacks, hope and doubt. But the beauty is this: when the avoidant lets someone in, they are showing their deepest act of trust. And trust, for them, is not given lightly. It's earned. It's rare. It's sacred. So if you are that person, if you've ever been the one who touched the avoidant's heart, know this: you were never ordinary to them. You were never just another partner. You were the exception, the proof that love could feel safe. And even if they didn't always show it, even if they stumbled, even if their fear sometimes won, they will never forget you. So here's the truth: you don't have to chase their validation. You don't have to force them to see your worth. Because if you reach their heart once, your presence is already engraved there. Whether they admit it or not, whether they stay or not, whether you're together or not, you made an impact that lasts a lifetime. And maybe that's the lesson we can all take. That real love, the kind that changes people, isn't about control. It isn't about fixing. It isn't about forcing closeness. It's about presence. It's about patience. It's about showing up again and again without losing yourself. That's what breaks down the walls. That's what opens guarded hearts. That's what transforms love, from fear into freedom. So if you're listening to this, and you've loved an avoidant, or you are one yourself, remember this: walls can protect, but they also imprison. Love feels dangerous, but it is also the cure. And the rare bond between the avoidant and the one who reaches them is living proof that even the most distant hearts can find their way back to connection. If this message touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden patterns of love, attachment, and healing, make sure you follow along. Because the more we understand our walls, the closer we come to breaking free from them.